So I started in the floor coating business in 1981. My father was the largest DuPont maintenance coating distributor in the world. And typically I don't come out and do jobs, but my best friend out in California wanted to get this done. I figured it'd be a good opportunity to come out and do a video. And so we were, Epoxy Coat is the first high-performance do-it-yourself floor coating kit in the world. Our coating system is a 100% solid cycloaliphatic two-component epoxy, and a cycloaliphatic is the highest grade of 100% solid epoxy. It's really what you want to use on your floor. And so the plant floors we do, for instance, we're the sole source supplier for NASA's manufacturing facility, and we use the same system that you would use on this floor. And so there's three different type of kits that we promote. One is a good system, which is a single component 100% solid cycloaliphatic epoxy, which goes down 5 times the thickness of a normal coating system that you would put on a floor. And then the better system is the exact same base coat, but it's got a polyaspartic two-component, high wear, UV stable, very abrasion resistant top coat. And then the best system is the same good system as the base coat, and then we put the flake to rejection system over the epoxy and to rejection. So you're going to end up with almost a 1/16 inch of a coating on it, and then we top coat that with a cycloaliphatic 100% solid epoxy clear. And then the best system, which we call the super system, and that of course is what Gary's got. He ordered the best system because that is is our best system with a polyaspartic top coat. And so whenever you add a clear coat to any type of a coating system, if you have a coating system and you have a colorant added to it and it's a single coat system, if you were to scratch it, you'll see the scratch is more prevalent than if you have a clear coat. And that's the reason why cars are clear coated as well, because a scratch in a clear coat is much less visible than a scratch in a color coat. And so that's why we recommend a clear coat if you want the best system. Remember though, this is a very, very good system. It's really an overkill. It's the same system we use in Ford Motor Company, General Motors, plants, stamping plants, and facilities all around the world. I don't really usually say these kind of things, but when you look at Epoxy Coat, know that we're the most experienced company out there for chemistry and the building of the products, and really the introduction of a high-performance professional grade do-it-yourself kit. Now normally we have a acid product that comes with the kit that can be used to install to etch the floor, prep and etch the floor, but in this case, we're going to take a diamond grinder and we're going to go over the concrete floor. It's pretty easy to use a diamond grinder. It does two things. If you've got any kind of a sealer on the floor, a diamond grinder will clean and etch the surface, whereas the chemical etch that comes in our kits, the acid that comes in the kits, will not etch the concrete if the concrete's got a sealer on it. So you want to make sure it doesn't have a sealer if you're using the acid. If you don't know, then go to Home Depot or one of the rental places and you can rent a unit like this. And it's a pretty simple unit. All it is a buffer, and then on the bottom of the buffer has got these kind of like diamond blades on it. And there's not much to it. In this case, we've hooked up a vacuum to kind of reduce the dust. And so the first process is to go through and diamond grind the entire floor with a large diamond grinder, and then we'll show you how to use the small diamond grinder for certain different areas. And we're going to diamond grind this whole floor so it'll be cleaned and etched, suitable for the epoxy coat to bond the concrete. And if done correctly, it'll bond better than the concrete bonds to itself. And so then what we'll end up doing is we're going to patch everything. We come back and we'll grind that patch smooth again, vacuum the floor off, blow it off, and then we'll be ready for coating. So this is basically how the diamond grinder works. It's pretty simple. The diamond grinder just spins in a direction, And so if you lift up, you don't have to manhandle it. You're only going up and down with the diamond grinder. So up will turn it to the right, down will turn it to the left. So if you can, I'll put on the vacuum. Once you're done diamond grinding, simply vacuum it like this, and then you power blow it to make sure all the contaminants are off, and it's ready for coating. So with our kits, any kit you purchase, we have a separate tool kit. Each tool kit, there are 3 different size tool kits, and in this particular tool kit, we'll open it up. And inside it is everything needed to do your floor. You've got an opener, and you see I could have used this and it would have been easier to do. We have rubber gloves. We have spike shoes, and you can, everything necessary to build the spike shoes. You have your aluminum oxide. You have your mixing wand. Actually 2 mixing wands. You've got your 2 3/8" Napa roller, a certain type of roller that's used. 2 brushes, China bristle brushes. Squeegee, 2 squeegees, a mixing stick. So everything you need to do the job. The only thing we don't supply are the roller assembly, the roller pole. Most people do have a 9-inch assembly, so you've got that. Most people have a roller pole just off of your broom or whatever, and a drill that you would hook the drill mixing tool to. Other than that, rags maybe for cleanup is all you really need. We're trying to make it as simple as possible, and really, to be honest with you, it's very simple now. Technology and what we've done all the hard work. All you've got to do is go to Home Depot, run a diamond grinder if you want to diamond grind it, or use the acid that comes with the coating kit and etch the floor, and then you go right into patching. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to start patching here. This is our Epk1000 Patch Kit. And so what Epk1000 is a cycloaliphatic 100% solid epoxy blended with fumed silica and other additives to make it easy to apply. And so when this is applied to your seams and to your cracks, it's about 5 times the compressive strength of concrete. So it's much better than any kind of quickcrete patch or anything. And because it's a polymer type system, you can coat right over it, even if it's tacky. The part A is actually this material here. It's pre-pigmented to gray. And then your part B is here. And so what you're doing is you're going to make small batches of mixing that product with this product and applying it to the floor. Now, it's no different than any 100% solid epoxy. Whenever you're using 100% solid epoxy, you've got to make sure you mix it really well for 2 to 3 minutes, because what's making it cure is a molecular cross-linking, and you need to have the stoichiometry correct so that you have a good mix ratio, and that's what gives you the chemical cure and the hardness in the material. And so you want to make sure it's measured correctly and it's mixed correctly. That's why we've made it as easy as possible so that people can easily do it. Now, with this material, it's not like our normal kits are real easy. You pour part A in and pour part B in, and it's already pre-measured and everything, so you don't have to worry about the volume. It makes it really easy to do it. And then you're just simply mixing it for 2 to 3 minutes, and you won't have any issues with the coating curing. And with this, we've made it so that even if you're off a little bit in your volumetrics, you'll still have a good cure. And so the floor has been completely diamond ground. It's been vacuumed and power blown. And so now we're going to start patching. So patching's pretty easy. As you saw, we opened this up. And so you've got a part A and a B. And the B has got a safety seal around it so it doesn't leak in shipping. So I'm going to pour about half of this. You only want to mix up as much as you can use in around 20 minutes. So I'm using half of that, and then I'll use half of this. So I'll use a different tool here to grab that. So, once you're done, we've got the drill bit in here. And of course the rubber gloves that come with it. Nothing to it, just mixing it up. And you want to go all around, up and down, and make sure there's no areas that haven't been mixed correctly. And so there's different ways that you can apply this. What I do is I go to the furthest corner and I start patching whatever needs to be patched. So you would think this patch would be hard to use, but to be honest with you, it really isn't. We've been formulating this for such a long time that it's pretty easy to use. As you can see, these patches are really simple to use. You know, it's not a something that if you can mix, you can install this. And it's very easy to do. Now the little imperfections you may see, that'll be covered up with the coating system. Especially this coating system that we've gone with, which is the Super System, because it's such a durable coating system. But it doesn't hurt to do what I'm doing, to patch. Now, for instance, this area right here is something that if you don't patch it, you're going to regret you did it. So what I do is I'll patch it, and then I'll come back later on and grind it and clean it up. Okay, now we're gonna diamond grind, kind of touch up areas. We typically use a small diamond grinder like this. You can rent these at Home Depot in a 4-inch, or you can get a 7-inch with a vacuum attachment, which is really nice. And then you just get around the corners where you couldn't reach with the diamond grinder. In this case, I've already gone around the corners, around the edges, and I've cleaned up most of it. But basically, I'm just going to show you real quick. So when you patch areas, sometimes there's areas that need to be cleaned up a little bit, and so you just take the diamond grinder and you just smooth it out. it's been about 4 hours since we put the patch down at 71 degrees, so sufficient time. And typically patch and all 100% solid epoxies will cure faster in a thick film than it will in a thin film. And so you just want to make sure the thin areas are not too wet and tacky, you know, when you do it. You want to make sure that they're tack-free.
After grinding, we're going to vacuum the entire area and then power blow prior to coating. You can see building the spike shoes are pretty simple. You just put the thing in there and it locks on the one end. You just screw those in.
Okay, so everything has been ground, it's been vacuumed and blown out. We've went around and taken care of everything, and this is what you want to do when you're getting ready to coat. You want to make sure you've got this laid out, an area of about 10 by 12 of poly, preferably 30 mil or something that'll hold up. So if you do drip anything, it won't drip onto your concrete. You want to make sure your roller cover is on its pole ready. If you know, in this case, we've got a small roller cover for doing over the area there, the step up. I have the squeegees already ready, and it's on the rod. You've got the brush over there ready to cut in. What's nice about these kits is you've got everything in the kit. You've got your 2 gallons of part A, you've got your 1 gallon of part B, and so what you're going to do is you're going to open up your part B, pour it in here, open up your part A, pour it in here, and mix it for 3 minutes, up and down and all around. Then you've got 3 gallons to put on the floor, and so I'll show you how that's done here in a second. I'm going to put on my spike shoes, my rubber gloves, and I'm going to get ready to do this. So now we're going to start coating. We're going to mix up the base coat by opening up the part A. This handy thing, which I don't even know how to use. This is how, oh, this one's even easier. You don't even need to do it. It's the part B that's a little bit tougher. Part B. You want to pour all of your part B in. Whatever you mix up, you want to be able to install in around 30 minutes. Well, let's say 30 to 45 minutes. It'll actually last longer than that, but that's our recommendation. So if you wanted to make a half batch, you could pour half of this and half of this. I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm pretty fast at it. And so what I'm going to do is mix a full 3 gallons, and you'll see I'll cut in everything as fast as I can, and then I'll squeegee it out and back roll it. And then the flake chips go on after that. What I always recommend with part A's is you pre-mix the part A, because sometimes you can be settled a little bit. You just go to the bottom. You don't have to mix it long. Just want to make sure the pigment and everything is mixed in good. Remember that this is a super kit, so super kits have a full rejection system, and so you don't have, you're not going to see this primer underneath it, but I still recommend that it be mixed. All right, you can see now that we've mixed the product and we're gonna start applying it. And so whenever you mix a product like this, you wanna pour it out as quickly as you can because in a mass, it cures faster. So it's an exothermic reaction that is based on time and heat. And the thicker it is, the faster it will cure. So the objective is to pour it out. Now, theoretically, we could spread this thinner than what I've got, but due to the fact that we specifically recommend it go down at a certain thickness, we don't cover the whole floor, even if it can cover. We try to spread it as far as we recommend. To get the proper thickness. Ultimately, all the work that you do is critical all the way up to the very, you want to make sure that everything you do is good at the all the way up to the very end. You don't want to cut any corners. So now, what I'm doing is just squeegeeing some of the material that I rolled out. And so, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just trying to spread it around a little bit. And then you take your dry roller and you get it wet epoxy in one of these puddles here. And then you start rolling it. And you'll be surprised where it goes. The goal is to get it, properly thick, the way you want it. So once you get it spread out, and in this particular garage, based on the square footage, we're going to put a kit and a half down. This is one kit, and so you can see that I'm spreading it. And I'm trying to try to get about 2/3, a little more than 2/3 of the floor done with this kit. So, what I like is to take a roller like this, and I like a long handle because you can stretch out with it. Now when you go against the wall, you flip it over so you don't blast the wall as much as you can avoid it. If you ever do a garage and you're from scratch, the second to the last thing is the floor coating. The last thing is the wings coat, where you'll actually coat the bottom of it. What I always do is go parallel to the wall, then you can go in. And I typically try to cross roll it. Even the dogs in the background like what we're doing. They're singing for us. flaking, you want to make sure that you get in the areas that are the hardest to get first. And you don't want to throw too much flake, because if you are going to go to excess with the flake chips, but you don't want to throw it so that you're wasting it. You want to make sure that you're pacing it out and you're able to get it to spread. Otherwise, you'll have, the color will show through. And so when you flake, you take your time doing it. As long as the coating is still wet, you can always go back. And the goal is to get all the edges first, because believe it or not, you tend to pile up the coating in areas that vertical surfaces. You want to make sure that it's still wet but tacky a little bit. Vertical surfaces are always harder. Sometimes you got to double broadcast them. But you get all the edges first, and then you fill it in. And the goal is to have enough material, enough flake material left over. You know, so maybe you'll have a friend that wants to do their garage and they don't need as much or something. You know, that's the idea. So what you do now is you're pacing out how much flake chips you got so that you don't overuse it. So you start seeding areas, not to excess. You just kind of like good enough, but not, you know, it's not covering 100%. And so you just keep doing that and don't worry about getting it all done at one time. As long as the coating is still wet on the floor, you can seed it. When you walk back through the seeded area, you want to make sure that you're not overly scratching the, you know, you want to lift up like I'm doing and set down your feet. Don't put your feet and scratch them and all that, or you'll have imperfections you got to deal with in the next day. You want to avoid that if you can. The goal is, if you do everything right, it becomes a very smooth, easy process. Generally speaking, a person that does this floor will save themselves $2,000 to $3,000 doing it themselves. And it's a permanent floor, and it adds permanent value to the home. And it looks great. It doesn't even look like an epoxy system. So you can do this in the basement, do it in the patio, porch. We have outside coating systems that are really good. We call it deck coat for concrete and wood. And so, you know, these are the kind of systems you want to put down so that you can not have to worry about it. Not have to worry about it chipping up and wearing out and looking bad. So we're down to the last box, and what we want to do is make sure that you're using what you've got adequately. You know, and so you really want to make sure that you're getting the whole floor, and then with what you've got left over, you walk around, and the goal is, even though you think you're done, wait a half hour and make sure that nothing seep through, because you don't want this the primer coat to seep through. So we're basically done. Took us about an hour to coat. Probably about an hour to an hour and a half to diamond grind, and about an hour to patch. And then probably an hour in just miscellaneous stuff. Well, this is the hard day. Tomorrow, so what I'm doing now is kind of just letting everything settle, and I want to make sure there's no wet spots. And I'm going to go through and make sure all the wet spots are gone, and we're ready to close the garage up. Tomorrow morning, we can come in, put the clear coat on, and by the evening, if we want to put the poly top coat, which we probably will, we'll put the poly top coat. So it's basically a 2-day job. All right, we're done. Now when you shut your garage, you want to make sure that you don't shut it on the floor. So what you do is you pull this and then you bring it down right to the level. Sometimes you can put a block or something under there so it doesn't go all the way down. This one's hard enough. That's good. You just... Okay, so we finished putting down the first coat and we broadcasted, and as I said, the first day would be the hardest. The second day is always much easier. Actually, it gets easier and easier, believe it or not. And yesterday wasn't even that hard. So, you can see that we broadcast access. Now, it's rare that you won't miss a spot, but I'm glad we have a couple spots that are missed that weren't covered to access. And this is what it looks like. Here's an example. You see the prime coat there, and I'm going to show you how you repair that when you do this without adding too much work to your job. To sweep up the floors, you take a push broom, preferably a stiff grist broom. I use gloves when I'm sweeping and doing certain things, grinding. It just helps out. If I remember to put them on, it helps a lot. So sometimes you have an abundance of flake chips, and so you don't have to clean it perfectly, but what you're trying to do is sweep the bulk up. So the idea is to sweep. And this is where you'll start seeing if you had any bare areas. And a bare area will be an area where the coating maybe, if you take too long to flake and you don't have a wet coating and it's starting to dry, it won't stick as good there. That typically doesn't happen, to be honest with you, but it can happen. And so the idea is to sweep the bulk of it up, because these flake chips can be reused again on another floor later on. And the idea is to keep these flake chips uncontaminated. And I'll show you how you do that. Okay, so as you can see, I swept it up. It's not hard to sweep up. You can use these little for around the corners, but here's the reality. What you're trying to do is sweep up all the excess flake and not contaminate the flake with anything outside. So this is all good flake that can be used again. And so what we've done is taken one of the boxes. You can use the exact same box with the same clear. We happen to break it down and throw it away already, but this is a garbage bag over a box. And so what we're gonna do is simply put it in here. So it can be used again in the future. This that I'm doing is the only stuff that can be used again. What we vacuum up and what we blow off will not be used. So this is all good. It can be used to touch up the floor. So you're probably gonna get about 50 pounds out of 150 pounds. Roughly, maybe 40. We've already swept the floor. This is where you'll find, you gotta look it over and see if you got any imperfections. And I had showed you before a small imperfection. And the goal is to just grind it smooth, because you don't wanna go too far down and then you'll have a larger area to touch up. So I'm just gonna try to grind this thing smooth like this. And of course this doesn't work. So now what we're gonna end up doing is, after we vacuum this whole area off, we're gonna put more clear there and we're gonna sprinkle that on, and I'll show you how to do that. Kind of, you baby it in, so to speak.
We're gonna blow it out now. We did a good vacuuming, and now we're just gonna get all the residual with the blower.
so we're done blowing everything out. And so at this juncture, I've decided one of the things you want to do, you don't want to put down a clear coat, have the sun beat on the clear coat. Even if you might close the door a little bit, the sun's going to beat on the very front of it. And so the objective is to do it early in the morning or later in the evening. So we're going to choose to go later in the evening. So we're buying ourselves a little bit of time where I'm going to take some clear, small amount of clear, mix it, 2 parts of A to 1 part of B by volume, stir it up, and I'm going to touch up some of the areas that need to be touched up and put some flake chips. And then this way at night here, we can just clean it off real easy and go ahead and put a clear coat. Whenever you're mixing epoxy, you want to make sure it's always been kept in a cool place. So when you're mixing it, it's cool. If you allow your epoxy to sit out in the sunlight, it'll get that heat will shorten the useful time for you. And so what you want to be able to do is take cool material, mix it, and then when you put it out, it will, when you spread it out and pour it out of the bucket, it will, the exothermic reaction will slow down the curing and allow it to be used without hardening too quickly. So you always want to mix this in a cool environment, apply it, and when you're applying it, you don't leave it in the bucket and cut in with it. You pour it out on the floor because you're now spreading it into a thinner environment. And as the material is thinner, you won't have that curing as fast. And that's what you want. You want good work time with it. And so it's essential to do that. And so there's not much to this. It's 2 parts to 1 part. You can measure it with a little beaker. And in this case, I've been doing it long enough. I have a pretty good idea of 2 to 1. And I'm just gonna mix up a little bit here. And we'll show you after it's mixed up how we touch up little areas, put a little bit of flake chips on, not a big deal, easy to do. And then we're ready. We're just ready for tonight, which this clear coat will go in less than an hour. We'll put a clear coat on it, and we won't have to deal with the sunlight or having to stand around and wait to deal with any potential bubbles. It's always a good idea whenever you do it, even if you do it in the morning or at night, to babysit it until it cures out to make sure there's no bubbles. The second clear coat over the flake chip is always the most critical one to make sure that it doesn't have any bubbles while it's curing. One of the worst things you can do to a floor whenever you're doing it is to pour either raw resin or raw activator. That's why you should never mix like I am right here. You would think I would know better. So whenever you get raw resin or raw activator, you got to clean it up. And so one of the best ways to clean it up is to scoop it and put it back in. And then you clean it up with thinner, because raw resin and raw activator is an inherent contaminant. The worst contaminant to your floor is not oil. It's raw resin or raw activator. So when you're done, as I'm doing here right now with this, is you clean it up like that. Then you take a rag with thinner and you wipe this up really good. Pour it on the floor. You don't want to scrub it in. You want to just dab it like I'm doing right now. The reason you don't want to scrub it too much is you'll get the fibers of whatever. So I'm mixing. If you're doing it by eye, you want to make sure that if you do anything, you put more activator rather than less activator. And so you bring over your bucket and your brush and your flake chips, and there's not much to it. You're simply gonna dab your brush in. Just like this is how the clear coat goes down normally. All we're gonna do is fill this in, and it doesn't hurt because this had a seam.
And this seam was not filled by us as much with the patch. So we're gonna fill the seam at the same time as we're doing this. And you wanna make sure that you don't leave the edge when you do this. You don't wanna leave the edge. I'll show you what I mean. So when you do the next area, what I'm doing is I'm trying to not leave an edge so that you can see the patch. And so the edge, you know, you just kind of feather it out a little bit. So there's not a lot of material there. There's no drips. So that's that area. And so not much to it. So what I'm doing is sometimes the face of a surface doesn't get covered 100%. Now this was not bad, but we've got the clear coat out. It's not a big deal. So I like to, you know, I'm gonna broadcast into the, so it covers it. Okay, so we're done blowing out, touching up, as you could see before. And so now we're just gonna start putting down the clear coat, which is pretty easy. We like it now because it's cooler, and we waited a little bit longer. And it happens to be in the evening. We didn't have to wait that long, but we had things going on. So I poured the part B, the 2 quarts of part B in. This happens to be a half kit. As you might remember, it's 2 parts to 1. And so you've got your 2 quarts of B in there. This is your A in the half kit. And my recommendation is to take the stirring stick that comes with it and scrape the edges so that you get everything you can into it. And these epoxy kits have been left in a cool, dry place. So we're not worrying about them being overheated prior to mixing. When you mix it for 2 to 3 minutes, and the objective is to not mix in too much air. You know, you don't want to induce too many bubbles into it. Basically, what you're doing is with the clear coat is you're putting it down so that it squeegees. The objective is to squeegee it as thin as you can and back roll it. Nice and consistent. So what you're trying to do is just kind of squeegee it out so that you're filling all the voids. And the hardest part is always the cut in. But if you don't squeegee it and fill the voids, when you roll it, you're gonna have to fill the voids with it. So it's gonna take longer to roll. Now when you come down an area like this, you want to pull any extra material off the edge because that material is bleeding down from the step. And you don't want it to be too shiny there because there's too much material. But as you can see, I think it's easiest to pull the squeegee. You don't have to put a lot of pressure on it, but when you push it, I find putting less pressure is better. So all you're really doing is trying to spread out the material a little bit. Okay, so this is the second batch. So what I did is I simply opened the 2-gallon bucket and the 1-gallon bucket. 1 gallon, of course, is part B, and I poured the part B into the large outer black bucket, and I poured the 2 gallons into the same bucket, and I mixed it for 2 to 3 minutes. And we had an extra bucket, so what I did is after I got done mixing it, I poured the entire mixed contents back into an empty bucket, and that helps make sure that if you had any part A or B on the side, it would mix in there, so you won't have any uncured epoxy. It just helps to make things easier. Now everything starts getting easier. You know, it actually goes a lot faster if you want now, because basically everything's cut in, and so once you pull, you know, you're just kind of pulling it back like that. And you just want to make sure that you don't have anything on your spike shoes, and make sure you don't have any, you don't scrape on the floor to drag your feet. See how I'm dipping it right in the wet roller. And for the most part, what you do is no different than anything that you've seen. You start along the edge so that you don't have any issues with it. And the key is you don't want to overroll this. You don't want to risk rolling in air bubbles. So if you squeegee in one direction, you want to roll in the opposite direction, because when you squeegee, you might leave a small amount of material, and so it's always good to go in the opposite direction. So you get a pretty good idea based on how much you put down before, how much you're going to need. And we'll probably have a little bit left over. That's okay. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm going to go back over the entire floor in the opposite direction. And all I'm doing is trying to even out the floor as best I can with material. Okay, so we're pretty much ready for the final coat. This is the easiest coat, and it looks finished, and it is a great system. This would be our better system, but when you add the polyaspartic for the top coat, you get more UV protection and higher abrasion resistance, and it does make a difference. It really does even out the look of the floor, and it's pretty easy. Now we do have 2 polyaspartics. This is the Poly 200. We consider it a single component, but actually really it is a 2 component. The second component is moisture, so it's a moisture cured polyaspartic. And so it goes down pretty thin, believe it or not. And so in this particular case, we're going to probably use around 2 gallons on this floor. And so these are the safety seals that come with it. There's really no mixing, but what I like to do to keep things simple is put it into one of the empty buckets, and that's what we're going to do. So as far as mixing, like I said, there's really no mixing. You don't have to worry about mixing. But I do put a stir in it and stir it around a little bit, which is not a big deal. The one thing with this product, unlike the epoxy, and there's no getting around it, the high performance polyaspartic material has odors. And so you will, until this is cured, fully cured, it will have an odor to it. And so that is something that you have to be prepared for. And so my recommendation is you don't open your doors at all for 24 hours. Apply it. If you bring the garage door down, allow some air to be able to go through it. And then after about 8 hours, you can open the garage doors and let it air out. And there's just no getting around the fact that it does have odors. Okay, so we're ready. We've got the material open. We put it in the bucket. We've got my roller cover. And in this case, I decided to go with an 18-inch roller cover because it's easier to uniformly coat the floor. It's faster naturally. Certainly the 9-inch is easier around certain areas, but using the polyaspartic, it's pretty easy to install. Got my brush, and then I'm going around and making sure no bugs got in it or anything. And in this case, we've got a little bit of a ledge here, and so I'm just going to knock it down a little bit. You do not have to pour this product out on the floor. You can carry this bucket around with you and although it seems thick, and it is pretty thick, it's not overly thick. So you'll be surprised that this whole floor will be done with a couple gallons. It's very hard to see where you're cutting in with this, so you want to kind of make sure you're going along and not starting in one spot, stopping and starting in another, so you can make sure that you're getting everything. One of the benefits of the poly is you're rolling out a clear that is consistent with the thickness. There's not as many variables as with the epoxy, so you can tend to get a much better uniform look to it. Now I'm overlapping into the other area, and you want to be very conscientious that you're overlapping into the other area, into the last roll, so that once you're done with this section, you're done. All you're going to do is walk through it and make sure that you don't have any very fine little flake chips that you want to put in. Okay, so I'm done going the whole floor, and I'm simply going over it one more time in the opposite direction. Flake chips, there's really nothing left now except for one little spot over here. And then the aluminum oxide
is pretty easy to put in. What you do is you take a small pinch in your hand like this, and you walk around. You just take a pinch in front of the doors. Rebound it off the ceiling or anything. If you put too much on, it will be harder to clean. You want just enough to do the area. So now that you're complete, you really don't have to do anything. You're simply gonna shut the doors about a foot or so off the coating, and you're gonna let it sit for, before you get on it, you wanna wait 1 day. My recommendation with tires, especially new tires, is to wait 3 days. But other than that, the floor is pretty much done. Within 1 day, 24 hours, you can start putting things back on the floor. But you can see that there's a huge difference between this and a normal coating system. This is really a permanent type system. And it may seem like there's a lot to it, but it really isn't. Once you start, if you follow the directions I've given you, you can do this exactly like I've done. And I pretty much did it by myself. You can have somebody else help you, but look you've got a $5,000 floor for a fraction of the price. That's the value. I want to thank you all for watching our videos, and if you follow the instructions, you're going to have the same kind of garage floor that we developed here for Gary. And this is something that I really talked to Gary about, and I think needs to be considered. You know, when you have a nice home like this, little things make a difference. And I don't think there's anything you can do that has a larger impact on the appearance and value of a home than coating your concrete floors, especially your garage floor. For the small amount of money that Gary spent to purchase the material and install it, he's got a great value, because as you remember seeing it before, the garage was kind of cluttered. There was older cabinetry, there was older things, and so now that he's decided to coat the garage, you can see that it's so much nicer, and so the curb appeal really matters. And the ultimate goal is when it's time to sell, you want something of real permanent value, and people walking into the home really recognize that over other garages. And so for a small fraction, under $2,000, you've got a beautiful permanent floor in your garage that permanently looks great. And one of the things I used to say about garages are typically used to store cluttered things and your cars. But as soon as you coat the garage floor, it kind of entices you to get involved in a few other things. And one of the benefits by cleaning it up is it becomes actually like an extra room. If you had like guests over in a party, you actually can have a party and feel comfortable in the garage just like it would be an extended living room. And so you're really adding a lot of usable value to your home by just coating your garage floor and cleaning up some of the other things. And so please come on up here and we'll show you what it looks like. So we haven't installed the grate yet because we just finished this. We've probably got a total of approximately 10 to 12 hours of work to do the highest quality system on this floor, and less than $2,000, and you're adding real value. When people come in here and they see this floor, it speaks for itself. There's nothing, even the walls and everything, nothing matters as much as when someone really looks at the floor. And so it kind of enticed Gary, and my recommendation, for a small amount of money, he can now take the shelves and paint them a darker color. This wainscot on the bottom, the base, can all be coated. He agreed to use the Epk1000. Now he knows how to use that, and he can patch it smooth, and he can put a coating over that, which will match the outside of the house here. And then he'll paint the shelving black and the walls this color. And so now this whole garage is going to look completely different, and we'll probably do a video when it's done. But he might have $500 in extra work and maybe a couple days of doing that, look what a difference it makes when you come in, and you're going to want to keep your garage clean and organized once it's done. And you know, there's no comparison between a good quality system like this and the cheaper systems. It's always worth the time and energy. Here's one thing I want you to remember when you coat your floor, whether it's in your basement, your porch, your pool deck, or your garage floor. If you coat a floor, you either want it, if you're thinking of going cheaper, you want that coating to fail completely and literally peel off the floor because it's going to start failing over time, especially if you don't prep it correctly. But you either want it to fail completely or you want it to last completely. There's no in between. In between means you've got to fix it. And if you want to keep putting perfume on a pig, so to speak, and keep patching it, you'll be doing it for the rest of your life, or you'll have to strip it off. And the problem with cheaper coatings is when you apply them and part of it's bonding and part of it isn't bonding, you've got to remove the part that's bonding to get back down to concrete. And so my argument, and always has been in the industry, if you're going to coat your garage floor, do it right, do it once, do it with a permanent product, do it with performance epoxy coat, and you'll have permanent happiness with it. If you're not going to do it right, save your money, save your energy, save your time. There are no ways to go cheaper. You have to do it that way. But look at what you get. What would you like to say about it?
I cannot say enough about it. This has honestly been an eye-opening experience for me, just watching the whole process of the floor going down. And I personally never expected it to look this good. When you look at this floor, there's no seams. The entire floor is absolutely perfect. And as Craig said, it really has inspired me to finish the garage, for lack of better terms. We started something, and at this point, we can do with just a little bit of work and effort, paint the walls, paint a few things, and before you know it, this entire garage will look custom. And honestly, like Craig said, the amount that will add value to the home is just incredible. So I'm really excited. I can't wait, frankly, to finish some of the paint work. Thankfully, I'm pretty good at painting, and I can knock this out without any problem myself. And I'm excited to see what the end product will look like. And once it's done, I'll definitely make sure that you have a picture or a video so that you can see when it's all finished.
Okay, so thank you again for going to epoxy-coat.com and purchasing a kit and watching our videos to install. One of the things that I want to mention is how to maintain the floors. And so as far as maintenance, when you create a monolithic floor, now in this case there was chips and gouges and all kinds of things in the floor and cracks and joints. We patched them all with our Epk1000. And so now you have a monolithic floor, so it's much easier to maintain and clean. So sweeping your floor is probably going to be about 4 times easier because it just kind of glides over it. You know, maybe once a month, depending on how dirty. I mean, I really clean my garage once a year, to be honest with you. But you can come in and you can clean it typically with water. It'll clean, believe it or not. But where you might have some oil or something, I just recommend like Dawn soap, like the Blue Dawn soap, and just put a little bit down with a soft bristle deck brush, and then just wash it off. You can use a power washer if you want. You don't need to use a power washer. A regular hose will work great, and then just squeegee it off, and that's great. You know, sometimes soap will leave a film. You can always, if it bothers you that there's a slight film from the soap, then you can damp wipe it off with a towel on the end of a broom, and it'll bring back the shine. But really, there's nothing else that you need to do. You don't have to worry about waxing. You don't have to worry about anything else. This is really a 30-year life floor. To give you an example real quick, we are the sole source product installed at NASA's #1 facility for manufacturing the SLS rocket program, which replaced the space shuttle. And we use our Epoxy Coat Good system with a prime coat on over 1 million square feet there. Now that system holds up for 15 years in just that system. This system here is the best system. This is about 4.5 times the thickness. So the durability, when I say 30 years, that's probably underestimating it. The reality is it's really a permanent floor. He'll never wear it out. In 100 years, you won't wear it out. You've got the strongest, most durable, abrasive resistant top coat with a polyaspartic. So you've got a really good, durable, chemical resistant, UV stable coating. So there's not a lot of maintenance with it. It's really something that you wouldn't it be nice to have something where you could just fix something and not have to worry about it? My homes, it's hard to get anything right. Your furnace, anything. It's nice to be able to put something to bed. You spend the money, do it right, and you've got it put to bed. Especially something that adds such a huge value. You know, you go with the garage floor coating, your approach, and you did your driveway or your patio. Every single thing you do has such a gigantic effect and a huge value that people comment. You know, wow, that's beautiful. You know, that's really nice. And so I hope you appreciate the kits that we've built and everything that we've got. Go to www.epoxy-coat.com. That's a hyphen, dash. Epoxy-coat.com. We're the world leading high performance floor coating kits. And we hope you enjoy our products, and please comment on our videos, and if you like the use of our products, please go on our website and comment on it. We'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.